Yeah, okay, great. Okay, so we'll call this Traffic and Mobility Commission meeting back to order at 5:26. And I believe our next item is the Avenida Encinas Coastal Rail Trail revision. And Mr. Schmidt, are you ready?
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair Perez. Again, Nathan Schmidt, Transportation Planning and Mobility Manager. This is the Avenida Encinas Coastal Rail Trail. The recommended action for this item is to receive a presentation and provide any additional input on the proposed concept plans for the Avenida Encinas Coastal Rail Trail project. This is, of course, we're bringing this back to the Commission from last month when you heard it on May 3rd, 2021. At that time, the Commission had a few questions, mostly in regards to the general alignment and why it was positioned along Avenida Encinas versus the actual railroad corridor, like we do see in some other jurisdictions. So staff has reached out to some of our planning partners, and we're just going to get back to you with kind of what we found from those investigations that we've done. So I'll just give a real quick overview, and for the public, in case they're watching, about the project. I know the Commission's well aware of everything that's going on, but the project itself, it's the Coastal Rail Trail along Avenida Encinas. And it basically runs from Carlsbad Boulevard in the south to Cannon Road in the north. For this specific study, this does include the portion between Carlsbad Boulevard and Palomar Airport Road, because that portion to the north, between Palomar Airport Road and Cannon, has already been constructed. So this is just focusing on that remaining section south of Palomar Airport Road. This shows the conceptual project map. Again, it basically entails a completed network of Class 2 buffered bike lanes throughout, with filling in all gaps within the existing sidewalk. So we'll have a seamless sidewalk network running along both sides of the roadway throughout, and also with Class 2 buffered bike lanes. Also included in the project are a few locations where we are proposing enhanced intersections or improved crossing treatments for pedestrians. Some of those being, for example, at the Poinsettia Coaster Station, looking to provide enhanced crossing here to provide better pedestrian access. Also looking at improvements to Palomar Airport Road, Avenida Encinas at Poinsettia Lane at that intersection as well, and also at a few other intersections kind of in the residential community to the south as we get to Carlsbad Boulevard. So again, getting back to the bigger question on, why are we positioning this along Avenida Encinas? So staff reached out to our planning partners at Sandag and Caltrans regarding the alignment process. And basically what we found is all of the prior analysis, which began, well over 10 years ago at this point, found that routing along the railroad corridor in this location would require a bridge, specifically across the Barranquitos Lagoon. This was essentially determined to be an infeasible effort because of the environmental impacts and of course the financial constraints that would go along with constructing an entirely new bridge at that location. One study that is a bit further along is the Encinitas Coastal Rail Trail alignment, and they did look at a few alignments in the area of this corridor. I'll show these on this map here. So what this shows is this is the Barranquitos Lagoon area. Here, of course, as you can see, the rail alignment is in this orange line that runs across. North would actually be to the left of the page. So if you reposition yourself, you would just flip this at a 90-degree angle, and that would be to the north there. So Encinitas, they did take a look at essentially 3 different options for alignments that would then lead into Carlsbad. So this is going to, of course, play into why we are positioning this along Avenida Encinas. So they looked at 3 different alignments. One would have been on Vulcan Avenue. They also looked at an alignment east of the railroad tracks, and then an alignment west of the railroad tracks. They determined that their most feasible alignment would occur on the west side of the tracks here. Again, there were some right-of-way impacts for being located along Vulcan, and just the access and impacts of getting across the railroad tracks would have been something that would be a major constraint in this area. So on the west side was determined to be the most feasible. So once that would take place, the coastal rail trail would then hang a left on La Costa Avenue and then continue up Coast Highway into the city of Carlsbad, where then it would then be rerouted along Avenida Encinas, and that would include our project area. So that's essentially just a little bit of background in how this will connect with the projects that have been identified by the city of Encinitas through their coastal rail trail planning process. So that's essentially what we found. The next steps for the project are for continued public outreach. We will be developing a project website to let the public know about the project in a way that will also offer ways to collect additional public feedback. We will be coordinating with the local residents along the entire project corridor, and then we will return back to the Traffic and Mobility Commission once we have developed more defined engineering designs, and we anticipate that in winter of 2021. After that, we would be submitting a scope of work change, because again, this is a slight change in the scope of work. We're just taking out that section north of Palomar Airport Road, because that's already been constructed. After that's done, then we would be, our engineering and design timeframe would take place roughly from starting, as soon as this month and occurring over the course of a year, ending in July of 2022. With construction then anticipated to begin in September of 2022. So with that, that concludes our presentation, and I would be happy to take any questions that the commission may have.
Yeah, I see Commissioner Hunter.
Yeah, when we talked about the going up the rail trail, it was, why are we going Avenida and Encinas all the way around? It wasn't the crossing over the lagoon portion, because we come up to Avenida and Encinas and you take a right, and guess what? You're there. You're on back on the rail trail north of the lagoon. Yep. And why wouldn't we be able to drop down onto that and then continue up the rail trail like we talked about, versus arcing all the way around the different areas? So I understand what you were saying on crossing the lagoon, but that was never even part of the question when we were talking about it last time. So
maybe if we go back to that map real quick, so we can kind of talk through that. So I guess your question is, oops, I'm going to share that real quick.
Well, I mean, you started off with the question, why aren't we hanging on the rail trail, which is exactly right. But you're right. You come up from Vulcan, and then you got to cross over the lagoon. So doing that on the Coast Highway is beautiful and gorgeous and wonderful. But then you take a right on Avenida Encinas, and 7 green squares, and you're back on the rail. And why can't we pick up the rail trail again at that portion just north of Ponto? I mean, just east of Ponto. Sorry, I got to look at the map that way, but
gotcha. Yeah, and again, I think some of the issues here, there are still environmental constraints in this area because it is biologically sensitive habitat. And then again, construction costs. In talking with Sandag, they're estimating it's roughly $9 to $10 million a mile to position the trail along this corridor. I think we see this as a great way to provide better access into the community here. The city is also, of course, working on potential improvements along Carlsbad Boulevard, such as additional trails here. So in the future, they would have that option to continue along Carlsbad Boulevard as well, as a more long-term option. But we do see this as the better and probably more interim and less expensive option in terms of implementability to be along Avenida Encinas versus along the railroad corridor to the north.
So along Avenida Encinas, we just stay on the sidewalks the whole way, essentially, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing to add, and it takes you all the way to probably the Porsche dealership, almost, I would think, right?
Yeah, we would be staying all the way. It would connect back within the railroad alignment once we get to Cannon Road, and then that would cross over and then continue back along.
I mean, you have sidewalks all the way from Ponto all the way up to the Porsche dealership, and then at the Porsche dealership you kind of lose it between there and the coaster station.
That's right.
I think, unless you cross the street.
Yep. That's where we would have the gaps in the sidewalk where we'd be filling those in.
but that's going to be changed, right? There's a CIP project to bridge that gap where the missing.
This is the CIP project to do that.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks. That makes sense.
Any other questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Pincier.
Well, I have the same question that Commissioner Hunter had, but the primary reason for that is basically poinsettia. If you run along the rail trail, you have a tunnel basically under poinsettia. If you use Avenida and Encinas, you have a traffic light that stays red for about a week if you're on Avenida and Encinas. And I mean, I don't know whether you've done it lately, but that poinsettia has the, that's got a green light forever because everybody's going to the beach. So I guess that's my main objection, if you call it that, to calling this the Coastal Rail Trail. However, if indeed we end up using Coast Highway or Carlsbad Boulevard rather, where it has an incredible amount of right of way after you get across the lagoon. I mean, we've got a huge center divide. We've got 4 lanes, divided. And there should be plenty of room there to provide an even better coastal rail trail on the west side with an ocean view and all of that. But is that even being considered as, I mean, that's where people are going to ride anyway. It's just that it's not very, I wouldn't call it very bicycle friendly at the moment for a lot of people. You do see group rides going that way, and most people will because it's so much faster. And there is, a great deal of advantage in connecting that neighborhood and providing, especially providing a connection to the poinsettia station. So I really don't have any objection to doing this. And but I just wonder, is our real plan to use the Coast Highway corridor and as the ultimate as far as the coastal rail trail, or is this going to be it, and then we're just not going to even think about Carlsbad Boulevard?
Yeah, no, we definitely are, looking at better options for Carlsbad Boulevard. Looks like Tom has something to say about that. I know he's working on that project right now. So.
Yeah, Chair, if I might add, it was a good question actually that the commission brought up, and I apologize. I had to jump off the meeting last month, so I didn't hear all the comments because I had another meeting I had to attend to. But the current alignment is as exactly what Mr. Schmidt said, and he gave a little background on it, but it doesn't mean that it's exclusive to other alignments. So what I would like to see in the future is, we do have a grant tied to this current alignment, and that's what's in front of you. In the future, hopefully we have an additional class 1 along Carlsbad Boulevard, and we get also a rail trail in the rail alignment. So what I would suggest, and we talked to Sandag about this, they weren't hard line saying that in the future there could not be a rail trail along that segment, which just said from Poinsettia to the north. But I would say let's leave it status quo and let's keep it on our menu. And as things move forward in 5-10 years or so, it might make sense to ask Sandag and whoever is the authorities at Bay to consider a rail trail in that alignment if it makes sense at that time. But there is a lot going on. There's a lot of moving parts, and we are considering, we do have a CIP project for the realignment of Carlsbad Boulevard, which I'll touch on in my semi-annual report.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Just one question. Commissioner Lincoln, go ahead.
So is there any Sandag funding for this, or is this just sort of a designation from Sandag that we would have as a rail trail, or what's the, or is it, do we have to call it the rail trail to get the ATP funding? Does Encinitas get funding from Sandag for their portion of it? I'm kind of in the dark on all this.
Yeah, it is a designation, and I believe it would help, or it helped our objective to get the grant, because you have to put your best foot forward, and of course you're competing for the funds. So yeah, I'm sure we highlighted that in the grant application.
Yeah,
Right. I'm just looking at the key assumptions here. It says minimum 16-foot width with 12 feet of travel and 2 shoulders, and sort of like we're not following, I guess, if we're just using a regular city street portion, it's not really a trail. It's not really a set trail that's 12 feet wide with 2-foot shoulders for bicycles and pedestrians. It's just a city street with sidewalks and bike lanes. But I guess if it helps get the project funded, and we can, in a interim basis, call it the rail trail, so that's okay. Not ideal.
Right, and those are good points, Commissioner. And this is a similar condition for many of the crossings of the lagoons. So if you go from Carlsbad down to through Solana Beach, theirs is actually, well, they do have a rail trail to the west side, but I know crossing over like is that San Diego Lagoon and then Penasquitos Lagoon, they have similar situation.
Okay. Any other questions or comments, commissioners? Commissioner Fowler, I can't remember, did you have your hand up? No, okay. Mr. Schmidt, I was just curious on that previous map, not the presentation PowerPoint, but in the agenda packet you just presented like a minute ago.
Yeah. Want me to pull that up?
Yeah, please, sorry.
Are you talking about the concept plan for the full corridor, or?
I think so, yeah. You just had it on when Commissioner Hunter was talking.
Sure, probably this one here.
Yeah, sure, yeah, that'll work. So the question that I have is that under the legend, the regional section, you have that blue ticks and it says future final coastal rail trail. Mm-hmm. Is that confirmed? Is that our trail that's going to be right next to the railroad tracks, as it's going to be crossing over like Agua Hedionda, that little bridge and things like that? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, what this is showing, this is the essentially the original alignment that was proposed when they were planning out the entire coastal rail trail. So, right. I think that's what we, like what Tom was saying, we're striving to, achieve with our ultimate build out when we can get that kind of funding. So, this being along the railroad, like you said, we could potentially build that out in the future along this alignment. We just don't have that amount of funding yet. So,
but and this is just in the past, like our neighboring city, Oceanside, they have this setup, right, that where it's considered the coastal rail trail, where it's true, where it's next to, and they got, how long, do you know how long ago that was? I'm sorry putting you on the spot, but do you know the history of that, like when they received funding?
I do not. Honestly, Commissioner Pensieres probably has very familiar experience with that one. It's
not a problem. I can offline talk to Commissioner Pensier or someone, but yeah, I was just kind of curious about the timing and when this is actually going to happen. So, okay, thank you.
I can quickly answer that question. The city of Oceanside has just 2 segments that are very close to being in a CIP stage, and one of them would link from Oceanside Boulevard down to across the on a brand new bridge across the there's a not a river, but it's near Buccaneer Beach, and it'll be on the west side of the tracks. And that one will probably get approved now that extra money has been available. It's been proposed several times. And now that the point system has been fixed essentially, but to allow this, that thing is going to go. It's already preliminary engineering is completed. And that's a huge improvement from the way it is now, where it goes out to essentially goes back to Coast Highway or stays on Pacific Street. Neither one of those are very well accepted by every age of cyclist. So this would be a huge thing. And then the next one would be to connect the very south end to the existing trail that goes into Carlsbad. And that hinges on an agreement between the Lagoon Society, and they are going to allow the city to build a connection between the dead end street on Broadway right to the section right across from the Buena Vista Lagoon Visitor Center, or whatever you want to call it, as long as the city will build a crosswalk at that point, and the city's happy to do that. So that will virtually complete Oceanside's trail from the transit center all the way down to Carlsbad. So it's they're way, the way I see it here, they're pretty much light years ahead of where Carlsbad is right now in completing that thing. And it's just it's a little embarrassing to me at this.
Chair, if I might add, I think Commissioner Pensier, you bring up a good point, whereas the rail trail then does follow then Coast Highway, which is the old PCH, or ties into our Carlsbad Boulevard. And Carlsbad actually took the lead with creating that separated Class 1 bike facility, which is much better than what was out there before. And as a result, they also included the roundabout at State Street. So I would also like to advocate on our city's behalf that I wouldn't say Oceanside's light years ahead of us. I would say that we actually have separated Class 2 bike facilities through our town along Carlsbad Boulevard, which is very much safer than certain segments along the old PCH. So yeah, I just wanted to give a shout out, as deserved, to my predecessors and the city planners and transportation mobility planners and engineers that had the foresight to implement that separated Class 2. And then a few years ago, which Commissioner Pensier, I know you love these like many residents do, they did the narrowing of the travel lanes and they put in the buffered bike lanes, and it's a much safer condition. So just wanted to give a shout out to our city.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Pensier, for the history. Mr. Franks, thanks for throwing down on that and giving a rep for Carlsbad. And then I think Ms. Gomez, you
I
have
acknowledge that. That was really good.
Ozzy, how about you? You want to?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I just wanted to add in that because some of you may not be aware of it, and I just wanted to, as a reminder, that the Avenida Encinas Coastal Rail Trail was actually approved by City Council as described in a resolution back in October of 2016. And that was for us to pursue the grant application. I believe you may have been briefed on it. So it was just as a reminder that it has been in the process for a while, but I believe it's something like $1.78 million is what we have for the grant. And so we would like to push it forward because we have gotten an extension. And so just wanted to pass on it as a reminder, if we're going to change any of the scope of work, we would have to go back to City Council and explain that, and potentially may lose the grant funding. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions? There's no motion, right, or anything this is just more informational.
Yes, informational, just receive your comments. So thank you. Thank you for all the good comments as always.